Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name's John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And we're thinking warm today on a chilly Friday here in the Finger Lakes, but expecting good weather for our holiday weekend. And I thought I'd just do a simple episode today and review some of the sporting events I'm looking at for this weekend in sports betting. And of course, one of my favorite events to wager on, the Indy 500, is on Sunday. And there's also a NASCAR race this weekend, the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte. And we have the NHL and the NBA playoffs both in full swing. So we'll talk about the Friday, Saturday, Sunday games in both of those. So before we get to any of that, let's do what we always do and start by updating my bankroll and review the plays from last week. We had a starting bankroll of $217. And we had Lewis Hamilton in the Monaco GP, and that was a very, very, very strange race. There was the driver that won the pole for Ferrari crashed his car on the way back to the pits and was never started the race. Lewis Hamilton qualified seventh. He had tire issues. Valerie Bottas, the other Mercedes driver, was in third place and had a wheel get stuck at the pit stop and had to retire. Max Verstappen won the race, wire to wire. It was his first Monaco win. Very, very, very strange race. Anomaly for sure. But minus $7 to the bankroll there. And in the NASCAR race, I had the two road course favorites, half a unit each. And Chase Elliott ended up winning the race. It was in torrential rain. They drove with rain tires and windshield wipers, and it was a disaster. Very lucky to get out of there with a win. Nobody could see anything. I'm surprised they let the race go on as long as it did. So we're a profit of $9 on Chase Elliott and minus $4 on Martin Truex. And then we had the Capitals money line against the Bruins. I believe that was Game 3 or Game 4. I'm not sure which, but Capitals have been eliminated. They won the first game of the series, and then they lost 4 straight. They just couldn't get anything going on offense. They had plenty of power plays. They had plenty of chances to score goals. Couldn't get it going. Minus $7 to the bankroll. And then we had the Vegas Golden Knights on last Saturday. They won that game 4-0, so that was $6 to the bankroll. So if you do the math, that's a whopping plus $4 to the bankroll. A winning week is a winning week. I will not refuse it. It makes the new bankroll $221. And dividing by 30, as we always do, because we try to remain selective sports bettors, makes our bet size this week going forward $7 once again. But we're moving up in the right direction at least, which is a good sign. So let us move on to the big event of the weekend, and that is the Indy 500, the 105th running of the Indy 500. The only times that they have not run the race was during World War II. I believe for 4 years they did not run the race. Sunday at 12:45, it's expected to be very good weather. Of course, there's 33 entries. If you watched this race before, you know it's a field of 33. There are 2 engine choices, the Honda and the Chevy. It is general consensus that the Hondas have had better reliability issues than the Chevys. 5 of the first 6 cars on the grid qualifying are Hondas. Chevys have been lagging, but the difference between the 2 engines is not that great of a deal. I think a bigger question is reliability, not power. But I wanted to point this out. The speeds on the front row were all 231. 231.6 won the pole. And then in the last row, the average speed is over 229. So it's about 2 to 2.5 mile difference between the front row and the last row. And the higher the average speed is, the less of a difference that 2 miles an hour really makes. The point being that this race is actually more of a fuel mileage race than most people tend to realize. What is going to happen here is this is going to be a big strategy race. There's going to be accidents. There's going to be cautions that will bring the cars close together. It's all about staying on the lead lap and deciding when to take your final pit stop. If you've seen any of the, I would say, more exciting races over the last 10, 15 years at Indianapolis, it always comes down to somebody who decided to stay out versus somebody who came in and might be on fresher tires, or somebody else is trying to save gas and they don't know if they have enough gas to make it to the end. It always becomes a strategy play, almost always. Very rarely is there a yellow with 20 laps to go that eliminates all of that strategy. So expected to be a fuel mileage race, and I'll explain why that matters to betting here as we go through the I have like the 6 top race teams in the race here, and these are going from probably most likely to win to least likely to win, but have a significant chance of cashing a winner. So let's take a look. We're going to start with Chip Ganassi Racing. You can see Scott Dixon is the favorite. He's on the pole. He won a couple weeks ago at Indy Road Course. That team is just dominating the points in the series. You have to remember that the series is a majority of road races. There are not many ovals. Tony Kanaan is driving Jimmy Johnson's car. Jimmy Johnson, the NASCAR driver, is doing the road racing, and Tony Kanaan is doing the ovals for that team. Kanaan is a former winner, knows how to win. Alex Palou is also qualified in the top 6, 14-1, and Marcus Ericsson is the 4th entry for Chip Ganassi, 22-1. All of those guys have legit shots of winning this race. And you can see these two teams. Andretti has 6 entries, Ganassi has 4 entries. These teams are trying to win the race, and what they're doing is they're going to put a bunch of entries in, and they're all going to have different race strategies. So they're going to have different pit schedules. Andretti might have 6 drivers there, and he'll have 2 drivers on Schedule A, 2 drivers on Schedule B, 2 drivers on Schedule C. The idea being whatever comes their way during the race, if an accident changes up the strategy of when to fuel, when to change tires, all those kind of things, they'll have 2 drivers ready to roll to take advantage of that situation. It's just a numbers game, basically. So you can bet that Chip Ganassi is doing the same thing with his 4 drivers. They all qualified very well. Andretti Autosport, Colton Herta qualified 2nd. He's the 2nd favorite at 7-1. Ryan Hunter-Ray, former winner, 25-1. Alexander Rossi, former winner, 14-1. James Hinchcliffe, I believe he has a 2nd place or a very good finish in the past, 66-1. Marco Andretti has a couple of 2nd place finishes, 50-1. And Stefan Wilson, British driver, 150-1. But you never know. I mean, these are well-funded teams. These are teams that are prepared for the most different scenarios. And that theme will also come into play in the Coca-Cola 600. We'll talk about that a little bit later. A couple other teams that have very good chance of winning this race. Rahal Letterman Racing. It's Rahal Letterman Lanigan now. Takuma Sato is last year's winner, and he's 20-1. Those are pretty juicy odds for the defending champ. Graham Rahal, who's been very strong in the practice, 18-1. And Santino Ferrucci, 50-1. Does not have a lot of North American experience, but this race has been won by Europeans before. Might be worth a bet. And Team Penske, why this is so important is because Roger Penske not only owns Team Penske, but he also owns the Indianapolis 500 and the racetrack. He bought the racetrack from the George family a few years ago. And so Team Penske has at their disposal Indianapolis Motor Speedway, whenever they want it. They know the ins and the outs of every inch of that racetrack, of the pits, of any type of weather, wind conditions. And Penske did not qualify well at all. All of his cars are basically in the back half of the field. But I'm a firm believer that this has them extremely undervalued in this race. Penske is the all-time winningest owner at the Indy 500, and you know that he's going to have a plan to make his cars competitive. I don't believe that the speed advantage that the Ganassi and the Andretti cars have are going to make that much of a difference over a 200-mile race. Now, if it's a green flag race with no cautions, which is highly unlikely, but if it was, I do think Will Power, if he had all clean pit stops, not Will Power, but Scott Dixon had all clean pit stops and it was green from start to finish, I think he would win. I really do. But that's not what's going to happen. So I feel like Penske's going to find a way to get his cars in the mix at the end. You've got Scott McLaughlin as the highest qualifying driver for Penske, 33-1. Joseph Newgarden, 15-1. Pagenaud, 20-1. And Will Power, both former winners, 25-1. Will Power starting in the last row. That concerns me a little bit, but cars from the last row have won before. It's not that big of a deal to go from the last row to victory lane. I feel like there's a lot of value in Penske cars here. And then finally, a couple other teams. Ed Carpenter Racing. Ed Carpenter is a relative of the George family, the former owners of the track. He's a hometown, born and bred Indianapolis racer, and he's had a couple of poles. He's always been able to get speed. His cars have just never been reliable enough to make it to the end. I do like Rinus VK. He's a series regular. He has shown a lot of speed. He's a Belgian driver that moved over to the U.S. when he was a teenager to race in North America because he felt he had a better opportunity here, and he's done very well. I really like his chances. Ed Carpenter, 22-1. Connor Daly, 50-1. He is an Indy vet. If his car is up to speed, he could be very competitive. He's had top 5 finishes before. And then Arrow McLaren is a Formula One level funded team. They've had mixed success in IndyCar, but they fund a full-time team in IndyCar. Pato O'Ward, which sounds Irish, but he is actually Mexican, is a very good driver, and he has been a top 5 driver in many of the races this season, 11-1. Felix Rosenquist, 50-1, and Juan Pablo Montoya, 33-1. Those are kind of long shots, but this team does, have the funding to field a competitive entry. So you can't discount them at this point. And then finally, Helio Castroneves in the Meyer-Shank. He's the top qualifying Meyer-Shank car. I believe he's in the 3rd row. He's trying to go for his 4th Indy 500 win and tie the record that's held by 3 other people. The reason I point him out is his goal is to win this race. He's not racing for points. His only goal is to win this race for the 4th time. It's the only race he runs in the schedule. He's going for the win or nothing. 28-1 is pretty good odds for him here, and I'm sure he has a strategy to be there at the end. So those are some of the main drivers that we're going to look at. That's probably about half the field I just went through, but we'll talk about my picks at the end of the race. But there's a lot of value in the Indy 500. There's a lot of guys that are like 15-1 or higher to win this race. And, the defending champ is 20-1. That's insane value. Scott Dixon is definitely the favorite. There's no question about that. But in a race that's going to be a few mileage race, and then a guy that might be just a little bit faster than somebody else, and they had to have different tires and different levels of fuel load, it's going to make a very competitive race. So let's go take a quick look at the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which is a 1.5-mile track. It is not a restrictor plate race, although it is NASCAR's longest race of 400 laps, and they usually start it in the afternoon, and it goes into the evening under the lights. You'll see here I have better funded teams, more prepared for longer races. And what that means is in a long, basically this is the most endurance type race that NASCAR has. More likely for a mechanical failure on your car. If it's something that can be fixed, it's usually the better funded teams with the more specialists and the better pit crews that are going to succeed here, because you have to make more pit stops even if you don't have any mechanical problems. So going over the best teams this year, obviously Joe Gibbs Racing is one of those top 3 teams. You have Martin Truex, the co-favorite, at plus 550. He has been doing really well. I don't know if he will be there, but you have to give honest consideration to all these guys. Kyle Busch plus 650. I believe Kyle Busch has won here before. I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe he has. Hamlin plus 800 and Christopher Bell 30-1. So maybe a little value there. And then, of course, Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson has been the hottest driver. Even though Chase Elliott won last week, Kyle Larson has been in the top 5, the top 2 or 3, I think, of the last 3 or 4 races. So he's been there. He's the co-favorite at plus 550. Chase Elliott plus 650. And then you have Alex Bowman at 1,400 and William Byron at plus 1,600. William Byron has really impressed me this season. He has been competitive in many different formats, and he's considered one of the premier iRacing specialists. So he definitely puts in simulator time. And he is somebody that can make changes and adapt. So that's somebody that he can get better as the race goes on. Somebody I really like. And then Team Penske, Brad Keselowski 10-1, Blaney 11-1, Logano 12-1. Really like Logano at 12-1. He has been very competitive in almost every race this season. He's had races where he's crashed out or had mechanical failures. But when his car was whole, he was usually moving forward or competing for a win. So I feel like 12-1 is really good odds there. So you'll have my picks at the end. But before we get to that, let's start with the NHL playoffs, hockey. The first round is winding down, and the second round is just about to start. So on Friday night, we have a Game 7. This is our first Game 7 of the playoffs. The Wild at Las Vegas Golden Knights. This series has been very competitive, and there's a couple of things that I scratch my head. Number one, as I actually scratch my head. Number one is we didn't see Robin Lehner at all in this series. I thought that we might get him at some point. I don't think you can bring him out in a Game 7. I feel like that's too much pressure to switch him for Marc-Andre Fleury. And Talbot has been good and bad. So he was obviously very good in the last game that the Wild won, Game 6. But you have to, in Game 7, you have to consider the Golden Knights the favorite, even though they're not completely healthy. I feel like if it gets over 160, the Wild might be worth a bet. But, boy, it's going to be tough to win Game 7 on the road. It's been done before. Saturday, we got the Game 6 between the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens. Jack Campbell had a rough Game 5. The Leafs came back but lost in overtime, but the Canadiens were up 3-0. It's the first game where Jack Campbell struggled. It will be interesting to see how the Leafs respond if they go with Freddie Anderson, or if Campbell does struggle again. If they pull him, it could be a disastrous for his psyche. I don't know. But up to that point, he's played at a level equal or above Carey Price, and is he going to be able to do it over a continued run? We'll just have to see. And Winnipeg waits for the winner of that one. And then we have Game 1 of the Islanders at the Bruins. And you have the Islanders that won their last 3 games to close out Pittsburgh with Sorokin in net for all 3. And then you have the Bruins that won their last 4 games to close out the Capitals and Rask in net for all 4. So you have 2 teams that are coming off win streaks. Obviously, the Islanders coming off just 1 or 2 days rest versus the Bruins coming off 4 or 5 days rest. But I expect this to be a very competitive series. The Islanders played very well against the Penguins. And, the Bruins are not 100% healthy either. So we'll have to see how they come out this series. But I feel like the Islanders finally figured out a way to generate some offense, and they're a super tough team to play against when they have a lead. So Islanders getting the first goal in a game is super, super important for them. It's super important for their success. If you live bet, you might want to keep an eye out for that. And then on Sunday, Lightning at the Hurricanes, as we expected. It took a little bit longer. Both teams played 6-game series. But I do like the Hurricanes at home. I'm also really surprised that the Hurricanes went the whole series with Nedeljkovic as their goalie, that they didn't throw Mrazek in there at all. Vasilevsky obviously played for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I feel like the Hurricanes have a great home ice advantage, and I feel like if they're getting anything close to even money at home, that's probably a pretty good bet. And let's move on to the NBA playoffs. Not my forte, so take it with a grain of salt. But what I've seen, the Knicks and the Hawks are very evenly matched teams, and I feel like the Knicks getting 5 even at the Hawks. The Hawks cannot match the home court advantage that the Knicks have in the Garden. This game's in Atlanta, but 5 points is a lot. Nets at the Celtics +8. I'd never like to lay that many, but the Nets have just been crushing the Celtics. I don't see how that really changes. The Clippers at the Mavs. The Mavs leading this series 2-0 as they go to Dallas. Mavericks getting 2.5. Seems a little strange to me, but the Clippers have to start shooting better or they're not going to be around very long. On Saturday, you got the Bucks at the Heat. The Heat getting 4.5. The Bucks have dominated. I could see them winning by 10 here. The Nuggets at the Blazers -3.5. This should be a very close series, a close game. I like taking points here, but Dame is tough at home. Again, shooting. Sixers at the Wizards. The Wizards are very hurt. Sixers, if I were, a coach or GM for Philadelphia, I would consider maybe resting some players, balancing out some minutes here. You don't want to risk somebody getting hurt for a series that you are going to easily win. But I do like the Sixers -5.5. And then the Jazz at the Grizzlies. This is a very interesting series because the Grizzlies won Game 1, and they shot very well, and the Jazz shot very poorly. And then Game 2, the Jazz won handily, and it was the reverse. The Jazz shot well, and the Grizzlies shot like 2 for 22 from 3 or something like that. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who is more likely to win this game as it goes along, because whomever is shooting better will prevail. Ja Morant needs to develop a mid-range game if he is going to if they're going to win this series. He's okay from 3. He likes to drive to the basket, but he needs to develop a 10-footer to combat Rudy Gobert in the paint. So they're going to hopefully come up with something. This is a team that's on the up and coming. Like the Grizzlies for next year, for its NBA future, I would really, really strongly consider that. They are looking like a team that is starting to mature. And then Sunday, the Suns at the Lakers. You have to think the Suns are going to win at least one more game in this series. They lost by 14 yesterday. I would think that there's going to be a competitive game here. So if it got past 7.5, 8 points, I feel like you have to take the Suns. It's just it's a lot of points for teams. The teams that are that good. So we'll see what happens. But interesting week. The play-in tournament for the most part. Except for that Golden State LA Laker game, they were kind of lopsided games. They weren't that competitive. But hopefully we'll have more competitive playoffs in the NBA here. So let's wrap it up with my picks for the Indy 500, and not really. I decided to take 8 drivers at a quarter unit each, so I'm going to drop 2 units on the Indy 500 because I think there's so much value on these drivers that I can drop a quarter unit and still turn a profit. Rinus VeeKay, Tony Kanaan, Graham Rahal, Simon Pagenaud, Takuma Sato, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Helio Castroneves, and Scott McLaughlin, quarter unit each. They range from 14-1 to 33-1 to win the race. So hopefully one of those will come in for me. I'm also going to do a quarter unit each on the Coca-Cola 600, picking 4 drivers. Denny Hamlin, who is due for a win. He had a great start to the season. He has not had a great 5 or 6 races lately, but this is the kind of race where he could make a mistake and come back from it. Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano and William Byron at 16-1. And then I'm going to take in hockey the Islanders money line against the Bruins plus 135, the Hurricanes money line at home against the Lightning minus 105. And then, like I said, I'm taking the Knicks plus the points in Atlanta, and I'm going to take the Bucks against the Heat. The Heat have had nothing for the Bucks. I feel like that series is all academic at this point, so we'll see if the Heat can put up a fight there. But that's my picks for the holiday weekend. Have a great weekend. Thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for viewing my video. And we'll be back next week with another Sportsbook Confidential, and hopefully we'll have some more sports betting knowledge for you then. So I'm going to play the outro music, and I want to wish everybody a great holiday. Take care, folks.